Chapter 8. Health, Good and Bad Thoughts, and the Birth of quote-unquote demons. Try a simple experiment. The results will be self-explanatory. Think of a sad event from your life. Similar feelings will soon follow, and with them, memories of other such unpleasant episodes strung together through association. Scenes, odors, words, perhaps half forgotten, will suddenly come upon you with new freshness. Your thoughts will activate the appropriate feelings. Beneath your awareness, however, they will also trigger the cell's ever-present memory imprints of stimuli received when those events occurred. There is, to some extent now, a cellular memory playback, and on the part of the entire body, the recognition of its state at that time. If you pursue such sorrowful thoughts persistently, you are reactivating that body condition. Think of one of the most pleasant events that ever happened to you, and the reverse will be true, but the process is the same. This time, the associated memories are pleasant, and the body changes accordingly. Remember, these mental associations are living things. They are formations of energy, assembled into invisible structures through processes quite as valid and complicated as the organization of any group of cells. Comparing them with cells, they are of briefer duration, generally speaking, though under certain conditions this does not apply. But your thoughts form structures as real as the cells. Their composition is different in that no solidity is involved in your terms. As living cells have a structure, react to stimuli, and organize according to their own classification, so do thoughts. Thoughts thrive on association. They magnetically attract others like themselves, and like some strange microscopic animals, they repel their quote-unquote enemies, or other thoughts that are threatening to their own survival. Using this analogy, your mental and emotional life forms a framework composed of such structures, and these act directly upon the cells of your physical body. Now let us return to Augustus, for here we find again in one individual an excellent example of the way in which seemingly non-physical thoughts and beliefs can affect and alter the corporeal image. Now, first of all, Augustus has been told in various ways, "You think too much. You should be doing something physical, involved in sports, more outgoing." Such repeated remarks, with other childhood conditions, made him afraid of his own mental activity. He also felt unworthy, so how could his thoughts be good? Feelings of violence accumulated early, but in his family there were no acceptable ways of releasing normal aggressive feelings. When these built up into felt violent eruptions, Augustus was only the more convinced of his unacceptable nature. For some time in his normal state as a teenager, he tried harder and harder to be quote-unquote good. This meant the banishing of thoughts or impulses that were sexually inspired along various lines, aggressive, or even just unconventional. Considerable energy was used to inhibit these portions of his inner experience. The denied mental events did not disappear, however. They increased in intensity and were kept apart from his quote-unquote safer, usual thoughts. In such a way, Augustus actually created a mental structure whose organization followed the principles I mentioned. Under other circumstances and possessing different characteristics, another individual could damage a physical organ by literally attacking it, as surely as it might be assaulted by a virus. Because of Augustus's particular temperament and nature, however, and his native though conventionally undeveloped creativity, he formed a structure rather than destroying one. In his normal state, he accepted only the beliefs he considered were expected of him. As mentioned, there was a time before his condition developed when his quote-unquote good self-thoughts and his quote-unquote bad self-thoughts vied for his attention, and the body tried desperately to react to constant alternating and often contradictory concepts. What developed was a situation in which the conflicting sets of thoughts and feelings finally took turns, though Augustus maintained his own integrity for most of the time. But those beliefs that he shoved away were, by attraction, instantly seized by the other mental structure, again composed of ideas and feelings combined into what you might think of as an invisible cellular organization, with all capabilities of reaction. In his normal condition, Augustus thought of his own powerlessness, for he had denied himself normal aggressive action, and felt this weak. The beliefs activated the body's cellular memory, weakening the body and impeding its function. Yet for a time, while performance was dulled, it was steady. A balance was maintained that suited his purposes. He became afraid that the body would go out of control and commit violent action, because he was of course aware of the strength of the denied thoughts and feelings. When a crisis situation arose, and when he became lost in despair, an acceleration began that he pretended not to notice, and Augustus II would appear. Augustus II was filled with a sense of power, because Augustus considered power wrong and set it aside from what he thought of as his normal self. Yet Augustus knew the body needed the vitality that he had denied it. Therefore, enter Augustus II with his great ideas of extraordinary power, vigor, and superiority, and with fantasies of exceptional heroism, and the memories all of those denied by Augustus himself. Aggressive action conveniently forgotten by Augustus was now recalled with exuberant glee by Augustus II. As a result, the chemical nature of the body was instantly revitalized. Muscular tone was greatly improved. There were changes in the amount of sugar in the blood and an alteration in the flow of energy throughout the body. I knew when Rupert interviewed Augustus that the young man identified Augustus II with the left side of himself. In his normal state, that side of the body contained more tension than the right. In Augustus II, the tension found release, and the energy flow became more even after initial bursts of activity. The longer Augustus II stayed, however, the weaker his position became, a fact recognized by Augustus and Augustus II. Augustus, you see, had to build up sufficient repressed thoughts and emotion because of a situation with which he could not cope. This threat would then bring about the emergence of Augustus II. The body behaves as you think it must behave, so Augustus and Augustus II, with their alternating patterns of behavior, caused the body to react in quite different ways. Forget now that in this case such a division occurred, and imagine instead the successive thoughts and feelings that you possess. When you feel weak, you are weak. When you feel joyful, your body benefits and becomes stronger. Augustus's case simply shows in exaggerated form the effects of your beliefs upon your physical image. If you think, aha, then from now on I will only think good thoughts, and therefore be healthy, and inhibit my bad thoughts, or do anything at all with them but think them, then in your own way you are doing what Augustus did. He began by believing that some of his thoughts were so evil that they must somehow be made non-existent. So inhibiting what you consider as negative thoughts, or assuming that they are so terrible, is no answer. Now, your beliefs about what is desirable and what is not, what is good and what is evil, cannot be divorced from the condition of your body. Your own ideas of values can help you achieve good health or bring about disease, can bring into your experience success or failure, happiness or sadness. Yet each of you will interpret that last remark in line with your own value system. You will have definite ideas about what success or failure means, or what good or evil is. Your own value system, then, is built up of your beliefs about reality, and those beliefs form your experience. Suppose you believe that to be quote-unquote good, you must try to be perfect. You may have been told or read that the spirit is perfect, and hence thought that your duty was to reproduce that perfect spirit in flesh as best you could. To this end, you attempt to deny all imperfect thoughts and emotions. Your own quote-unquote negative thoughts appall you. You may believe also what I have told you, that your thoughts create your reality. So you become all the more frightened at mental or actual expressions of an aggressive nature. You may be so concerned about hurting someone else that you hardly dare move. Trying to be perfect all the time can be far more than a nuisance. It can be disastrous because of your misunderstanding. The word perfect holds many pitfalls. In the first place, it presupposes something completed and done beyond change, and so beyond motion, further development, or creativity. The spirit is always in a state of becoming, ever-changing, supple, and in your terms without end, as it was and is without a point of beginning. Rupert said recently that if he was sure of one thing about physical reality, that it was not anywhere near perfect in these terms. But in the same meaning of the word, neither is the spirit, which to fulfill the requirement of perfection would have to be set in some state of completion beyond which no fulfillment or creativity was possible. Your thoughts are. You may approve or disapprove of them in the way that you think of a storm, for example. Left alone, your thoughts are as various, magnificent, trivial, frightening, or glorious as a hurricane, a flower, a flood, a toad, a raindrop, or the fog. Your thoughts are perfectly themselves. Left alone, they come and go. You, with your conscious mind, are to discriminate among those thoughts as to which ones you want to form into your system of beliefs, but in so doing, you are not to pretend blindness. You may at times wish that a rainy day were a sunny one, but you do not stand at the window and deny that the rain is falling, or that the air is cold and the sky dark. Because you accept the rain as a present reality does not mean either that you must believe that all days are stormy and make that obvious misconception a part of your beliefs about reality. So you do not have to pretend that a quote-unquote dark thought doesn't exist. You do not have to take it as a fact that all of your thoughts would be murky, left alone, and try to hide them. Some people are afraid of snakes, even of the most harmless variety, and blind to their beauty and place in the universe. Some are afraid of certain thoughts, and so are oblivious to their beauty and their place in mental life. Since you have all kinds of thoughts, there are reasons for having them, as you have all kinds of geography. Within your reality, it is as foolish to deny the existence of certain thoughts as it would be, say, to pretend that deserts do not exist. In following such a course, you deny dimensions of experience and diminish your reality. This does not mean that you have to collect what you think of as negative thoughts, any more than it means that you should spend a month in a desert if you do not like them. It does mean that within nature as you understand it, nothing is meaningless or to be pretended out of existence. Now, each individual will have a slightly different definition for quote-unquote negative emotions. One person may find sexually stimulating thoughts delightful and a most enjoyable kind of diversion. Another may consider them impure, bad, unhealthy, or otherwise disadvantageous. Some individuals can with ease and exuberance imagine themselves in a fistfight, a brawl, unmercifully beating the devil out of an adversary. The same thoughts may fill another man with intense terror and grave feelings of guilt. The same man, however, who would not purposely entertain fantasies of such nature under normal conditions, may, in times of war, imagine himself killing the enemy with the greatest feelings of holy joy and righteousness. What is usually forgotten is the real nature of aggressiveness, which in its truest sense simply means forceful action. This does not necessarily imply physical force, but instead the power of energy directed into a material action. Birth is perhaps the most forceful aggression in your terms of which you are capable in your system of reality. In the same way, the growth of an idea into temporal realization is the result of creative aggression. It is impossible to try to erase true aggressiveness. To do so would obliterate life as you know it. Any attempt to impair the flow of true aggression results in a distortive, uneven, explosive pseudo-aggression that causes wars, individual neuroses, and a great many of your problems in all areas. Normal aggressiveness flows with strong patterns of energy, giving motive power to all of your thoughts, whether you consciously regard them as positive or negative, good or bad. The same thrusting creative surge brings them all forth. When you consider a thought good, you usually do not question it. You allow it its life and follow through. Usually, if you regard a thought as bad or beneath you, or if you are ashamed of it, then you try to deny it, stop its motion, and hold it back. You cannot restrain energy, although you may think you can. You simply collect it, whereupon it grows, seeking fulfillment. This will lead you to say, supposing I feel like killing my boss, then, or putting poison in my husband's tea, or worse, hanging my 5 children on the clothesline instead of the towels. Are you saying that I should merely follow through? I sympathize with your predicament. The fact is that before being quote-unquote assailed by what may seem to be such terrifying unnatural ideas, you have already blocked off an endless variety of far less drastic ones, any of which you could have expressed quite safely and naturally in daily life. Your problem, then, is not how to deal with normal aggressiveness, but how to handle it when it has remained unexpressed, ignored, and denied over a long period of time. Later in this book, we will deal specifically with methods to that end. Here, I simply want to point out the difference between healthy, natural aggressiveness and the explosive, distortive emergence of repressed aggression. You will each have to discover for yourself those areas in which you strongly repress your thoughts, for many energy blockages will be found there. All of this will be covered in the later section. For now, consider the blocked energy. Consciously, most people are already afraid of it. They did not repress it because they considered it good. When I use the term quote-unquote repressed, I do not mean forgotten or shoved into the unconscious or beyond reach. You may pretend that such material is hidden, but it is quite within your conscious awareness. You have only to honestly look for it and organize what you find. It is very possible to quote-unquote see such information and not see it at the same time, simply because you do not add all of the data together. No one can make you do that, of course. To do it, you must have a sense of courage and adventuresomeness, and tell yourself that you refuse to be cowed by ideas that after all belong to you, but not are you. Now, it is often said that man believes in devils because he believes in gods. The fact is that man began to believe in demons when he started to feel a sense of guilt. The guilt itself arose with the birth of compassion. Animals have a sense of justice that you do not understand, and built into that innocent sense of integrity, there is a biological compassion, understood at the deepest cellular levels. In your terms, man is an animal rising out of himself, from himself evolving certain animal capacities to their utmost, not forming new physical specializations of body any longer, again in your terms, but creating from his needs, desires, and blessed natural aggressiveness inner structures having to do with values, space, and time. To varying degrees, this same impetus resides throughout all creaturehood. Such a task meant that man must break out of the self-regulating, precise, safe, and yet limiting aspects of instinct. The birth of a conscious mind, as you think of it, meant that the species took upon itself free will. Built-in procedures that had beautifully sufficed could now be superseded. They became suggestions instead of rules. Compassion, quote-unquote, rose from the biological structure up to emotional reality. The quote-unquote new consciousness accepted its emerging triumph, freedom, and was faced with responsibility for action of a conscious level, and with the birth of guilt. A cat playfully killing a mouse and eating it is not evil. It suffers no guilt. On biological levels, both animals understand. The consciousness of the mouse, under the innate knowledge of impending pain, leaves its body. The cat uses the warm flesh. The mouse itself has been hunter as well as prey, and both understand the terms in ways that are very difficult to explain. At certain levels, both cat and mouse understand the nature of the life energy they share, and are not, in those terms, jealous for their own individuality. This does not mean that they will not struggle to live, but they have a built-in unconscious sense of unity with nature in which they know they will not be lost or immersed. Man, pursuing his own way, chose to step outside of that framework, on a conscious level. The birth of compassion then took the place of the animal's innate knowledge. The biological compassion turned into emotional realization. The hunter, freed more or less from animal courtesy, would be forced to emotionally identify with his prey. To kill is to be killed. The balance of life sustains all. He must learn on a conscious level then what he knew all along. This is the intrinsic and only real meaning of guilt and its natural framework. You are to preserve life consciously then, as the animals preserve it unconsciously. Now, the interpretations and uses to which this quite natural guilt has been put are horrendous. Guilt is the other side of compassion. Its original purpose was to enable you to emphasize on an aware level with yourselves and other members of creaturehood, so that you could consciously control what was previously handled on a biological level alone. Guilt in that respect, therefore, had a strong natural basis, and when it is perverted, misused, or misunderstood, it has that great terrifying energy of any runaway basic phenomenon. If you think you are guilty because you read one kind of book or another, or entertain certain thoughts, then you run particular risks. If you believe something is wrong, then in your experience it will be, and you will consider it negative. So you will collect an quote-unquote unnatural guilt, one that you do not deserve, but accept, and so create. You will not usually form a creation of it of which you are proud. If you believe firmly in poor health, you may use this repressed energy to attack a physical organ. A gallbladder may become quote-unquote bad. According to your own belief system, you may trust the integrity of your body and instead project this guilt out upon others, onto a personal enemy or a particular race, creed, or color. If you are religious-minded and fundamental in your beliefs, you may blame a devil who causes you to behave in such and such a manner. As the body creates antibodies to regulate itself, so you will set up mental and emotional antibodies, certain thoughts that are quote-unquote good, to protect you from the fantasies or ideas that you consider bad. If its built-in instincts are left alone, the body is basically self-regulating. It does not kill off all red blood cells if there are too many at a given time. It has better sense. But in your fear of negative thoughts, you often attempt to deny all normal aggressiveness, and at the first glimpse of it, bring up your mental antibodies prepared for action. In so doing, you try to repudiate the validity of your own experience. If you do not feel your individual reality, then you can never realize that you form it, and so can change it. It is this denial of experience and the energy blockages involved that build up the accumulation of unnecessary, quote-unquote, unnatural guilt. The body itself cannot understand these blocked messages and cries out to express its own corporeal knowledge of the moment as it experiences it. You mentally shout in such situations that you do not feel what you feel. Over a period of time, the conscious mind, because of its position, can override the body's messages. Yet the backed-up accumulation of energy will seek outlet. The smallest, most innocent symbol for the repressed material may then bring about behavior on your part that seems all out of proportion to the stimulus. On 10 justified occasions, you may have felt like telling someone to leave you alone, but refrained, not wanting to hurt their feelings, afraid that you would be rude, even though the occasion was one where your remark might well have been understood and taken calmly. Because you did not accept your feelings, much less express them, on the next occasion you might explode seemingly without reason and initiate a spectacular argument, completely unjustified. In this case, the other person has no idea as to why you reacted in such a fashion, and is deeply hurt, and your guilt grows. The trouble is that ideas of right and wrong are intimately involved with your chemistry, and you cannot separate your moral values from your body. When you believe that you are good, your body functions well. I am sure that many of you will say, "I try constantly to be good, yet I am in miserable health, so how can that be?" If you examine your own beliefs, the answer will be apparent. You try to be so good precisely because you believe you are so bad and unworthy. Demons of any kind are the result of your beliefs. They are born from a belief in quote-unquote unnatural guilt. You may personify them. You may even meet them in your experience, but if so, they are still the product of your immeasurable creativity, though formed by your guilt and your belief in it. If you shed the distorted concepts of unnatural guilt and accepted the wise ancient wisdom of natural guilt instead, there would be no wars. You would not kill each other mindlessly. You would understand the living integrity of each organ in your body and have no need to attack any of them. This obviously does not mean that the time of the body's death would not come. It does mean that the seasons of the body would be understood as following those of the mind, ever-changing and flowing, with conditions coming and going, but always maintaining the splendid unity within the body's form. You would not have chronic illnesses. Generally speaking, and ideally, the body would wear out gradually while still showing far greater endurance than it does now. There are many other conditions, though, all having to do with your conscious beliefs. You may think it is better to die quickly of a heart attack, for example. Your individual purposes are not the same, so you will manage your body experiences in a great variety of ways. Generally speaking, you are here to expand your consciousness, to learn the ways of creativity as directed through conscious thought. The aware mind can change its beliefs, and so to a large extent, it can alter its bodily experience.